So that said, not every candidate or not every business is a suitable candidate for restructure.
Mm.
It's objective. It's an objective fact that not all distressed businesses successfully negotiate a restructuring phase. So I guess that turns back to the clear-eyed assessment of where you actually sit. And, you know, it might be particularly in the situation where a director's personal assets are exposed or in jeopardy, where those tough conversations have to be had, whether it's worth going through the process, and because let's face it, you generally only get one crack at this unless you have any substantive stars,
Mm.
or whether it's a case of just throwing good money back.
Right. Right. Okay. Wow. So much to unpack there, right there. Okay. So many businesses are currently grappling with financial challenges. Drawing from your wealth of experience, what advice would you offer to those considering seeking help with insolvency or recovery?
I suppose that's circling back to what I just said. Make a You've got to act sooner rather than later, and the inertia is not going to not doesn't necessarily cut it. And the thing about distress is when it becomes significant, it can become quite overwhelming in a fairly short space of time.
Mm.
And it gets to the point where you know factors become outside the director's influence and control in a distressed scenario. So I guess then the other point is like directors have to probably accept, or there is this thought that directors are the ones who need to navigate them through this process. It's another business issue that they just need to deal with. They're experts in their business, but not necessarily business people aren't. Directors aren't necessarily experts in the SEC and the insolvency framework. So I guess it's also complicated by the fact that there's a plethora of advisors out there.
Yeah.
And there's also a range of short-term financing options which weren't available 20 years ago, and particularly in terms of unsecured lending. And that can be a bit of a false dawn sort of business, because it might provide business with a bit of a sugar hit, but it doesn't deal with the long-term underlying structural problems which got the business there in the first place. So insolvency practitioners are fond of saying, you better act sooner rather than later, because it expands the range of options available to stakeholders and directors in the instance of distress to maximise the chance of the successful turnaround. But the reality is insolvency practitioners generally are the last port of call. Once refinance options and once sale options are exhausted. So I guess the thing about it is identifying where you sit on the distress cycle, and then move with a plan and actually implement that plan. Sort of, and it's got to be kind of rigid, and you've got to be stakeholders have to be disciplined about this. Otherwise, as I said, it can get out of control quite quickly.
Right, right. So under a recovery scenario, which is a bit more similar to what voluntary administration, where there's no court proceeding.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Whereas the insolvency, it's the director has no other avenues and has to abide by the court proceeding coming from the creditors.
Like generally a lot of court liquidations, there's the reason the directors let it get to the court steps is there's that there's no business left. And generally, voluntary appointments are where there is a business to be saved. But the issue with some voluntary appointments is there's still, unfortunately, a capacity of sometimes directors do wait until the 11th hour where there might be where one they may not be able to pay the wages or pay significant suppliers, or there might be a winding up hearing being heard in the last week, and that's sort of as a reflection of not of probably acting too late, and it is a process that, whilst there are obviously variables in insolvency, if you take concrete steps early enough, you can reduce those variables.